A very good morning and welcome to the ODPP Café. My name is Anita Onuku. I'm your host for the show. Karibu sana to the show and thank you for taking time to be with us this morning. Today we are going to talk about human rights and election. If you saw our post on social media last night, we said we are going to talk about human rights and election. As always, before we start the show, we are going to give you a sneak peek into the courts. Just some cases, not all of them, just to maybe catch up on those things maybe you missed on or some things we just like to highlight today. The show is live on Facebook and on YouTube. On Facebook, we are at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Kenya. And on YouTube, we are also at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Kenya. We are also on Twitter at ODPP_KE. So I welcome you to engage, to subscribe, to like, to invite your friends to also follow us and engage with us and get to understand what the law says, get to understand some aspects of the law. Like if you're not a lawyer like me, then you get to understand some of the things that maybe you'll come across in your day-to-day life. So we are out to inform you, to educate you, to sensitize you, to talk about the law, whether you're in conflict or in contact with the law, and also just for you to get to understand your rights. And like I said, today it's about human rights and elections. Please engage with us. So just give me a few minutes, I take you through the course, and you can start on with the discussion. Give me a minute. So the first story we have from the courts today is about a man in court. He's in court for torturing his 6-month-old twins in Nairobi's Raila slums. A 24-year-old man who allegedly tortured and seriously injured the 6-month-old twins has been charged with causing them grievous harm. Frederick Okello is accused of inflicting injuries on the infants, a boy and a girl, after allegedly torturing them on July 6th at his house in Raila slums, Kibera in Nairobi. So this story is trended for the wrong reasons, but the story here is that 2 infants were tortured by an adult and the guy is in court now. I know people are all just talking about Raila slums throughout on social media, but the case here is about a man, a grown-up man, who tortured twins, and that was really, really bad. So the guy was taken to court, and he was charged with causing them grievous harm. Prosecution counsel Nancy Kerubo opposed cash bail terms for the accused and informed the court that the infants are still admitted at the KNH, and one of them is in ICU. So the accused denied the charges before Senior Principal Magistrate Esther Boke at the Kibera Law Courts. He was released on a surety bond of 500,000 without the option of a cash bail. So this case will be mentioned again on 26th July 2022. The next case is about a 76-year-old man. He was charged with withdrawing cash from a deceased bank's account. The man has admitted to impersonating the former chairman of Karen Hospital to successfully withdraw 300,000 from Absa Bank. Joseph Kamau Mungai, alias James John Mugeria, was charged at Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi. He's alleged to have committed the offense on July 8, 2022 at Absa Bank, Kenya, Yaya Center branch. He's alleged to have attempted to steal 700,000 from the said bank. Wow. So the case is still in court, and he has admitted to impersonating someone to get money from their account. In the evidence presented, tabled in court on July 12, 2022 at around 11:30, the branch security manager at the bank reported through the telephone that there was a suspect being held at the bank's Yaya Center branch for attempting to make a fraudulent withdrawal by impersonating the account owner. The court was told the officers had also established the said account had been flagged and marked deceased in the bank system. So he pleaded guilty to the said offense before resident magistrate Ben Mark Ekubi. So I think we'll just follow and see how this case goes. The next story is about a chief in Siaya. A sublocation assistant chief was on Thursday arraigned at the Siaya Law Courts over the alleged defilement of a minor. Samuel Hezron Nyawalo, an assistant chief of Ramula sublocation in East Game, Siaya County, was accused of committing the offense contrary to Section 8 of the Sexual Offences Act No. 3 of 2006. Appearing before the judge, Margaret Wambani, the court heard that Nyawalo defiled a 14-year-old girl on the 4th and 5th of June 2022. Nyawalo pleaded not guilty and was released on a 200,000 bond. Kisumu-based rights defender Paul Omondi, who had pressed for the arrest of Nyawalo, said the incidences of defilement are increasing in game. Omondi urged locals to whistleblow and survivors to report to the police or a responsible member of the community whenever such happens. That way, he said, perpetrators can be charged and justice served. The Kenya Ports Authority, KPA Board of Directors, has suffered a blow after its objection to a petition challenging a new controversial human resource policy was overruled. Employment and Labor Relations Court Judge Byram Ongaya dismissed the objection and directed the parties to take steps to expedite the hearing and determination of the main case. The civil dispute pits the KPA board against Genesis for Human Rights Commission over the changes. Through lawyer Githu Muigai, the board objected to the case, questioning GHRC's legal capacity to file the suit to quash internal management instruments governing employment and human resource management. In its court documents, the organization says that if the irregularity goes ahead unchecked, a precedent will be set where the rule of law and laid down procedures for policy formulation in public institutions will be thrown out of the window. Quite different and an interesting story there on policy formulation. The next case is about a businessman who is in court over 3 million hides and skins fraud case. A businessman from Bungoma County has been charged before Milimani law courts for obtaining money through false pretense, contrary to Section 313 of the Penal Code. The trader, identified as Kelas Galvud Wafula, is accused of obtaining 3,407,069 shillings from Kamaldeen Ibrahim Ahmed to ship hides and skins to Nigeria. The accused is alleged to have committed the offense with the intent to defraud the complainant of millions between October 2021 and February 2022. Wafula denied the fraud charges before Senior Magistrate Ben Makikubi. After denying the charges, Wafula, through his lawyer, sought lenient bail terms, stating that the case emanates from a sour business transaction between friends. The magistrate ordered that Wafula is released on a bond of 1 million with alternative cash bail of 650,000 shillings. And in addition to that, the court had that the accused will also have to provide one contact person. The case will be mentioned on July 19th for pre-trial. So those are some of the cases that we had for you today. Like we keep saying here, they are not exhaustive. They're just a few of the cases that have been in court. Maybe you missed it, maybe you saw it, but just for our show today, we chose to highlight those few cases. So back to our topic for the day, and I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves, and we want to talk about human rights and elections. So we're going to have our elections on 9th of August 2022, and I bet I hope like me, you can't wait to just have this come and go and peacefully, like we always pray for these elections to be. It's the third elections under the 2010 Constitution, and it is imperative that we learn lessons that from the other elections after the 2010 promulgation of the new Constitution in 2010. So we don't do very well in human rights, especially during elections. Sort of our bad manners come out during election, both from state and non-state actors. And with non-state actors, I'm talking about also you and me. We also misbehave during elections, and we find ourselves violating human rights. So today we want to see what it means to uphold human rights, especially during election. I was reading a report that said that it is what happens during election that goes on for the 5 periods after elections. So we really need to see how to mark our behavior during this time. So I am not the expert. I want to introduce the experts. Actually, I want them to introduce themselves. And of course, I'm going to start with Lady, my guest of honor. It's been a long time. We've always planned to come to the show, and today we're glad to host you.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, ODPP, for convening this dialogue on this important discussion. My name is Julie Matheka. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I currently work as a program manager at the International Commission of Jurists, ICJ Kenya. So I'll start by introducing the ICJ Kenya. So ICJ Kenya is a member organization founded in 1959 and registered in 1974 in Kenya. We work towards the promotion of human rights, democracy, rule of law within Kenya and across Africa. Our focus during this election period stems from the fact that we have worked on elections before. We have actually been in landmark issues. For example, you were there in the clamor for the Constitution. We were there post-2007, engaging with the task force that was there to do police reforms. And we are happy that some of the outcomes of the police reforms conversation in the National Task Force was the creation of the Independent Policing Oversight Unit. Another thing that we have been doing is, of course, working with duty bearers, as you rightly said, in terms of election preparedness, but also looking at non-state actors, the people, in regards to how are they engaging in the whole election process. So ICJ Kenya and other civil society organizations have been engaging in civic education, engaging with Monanchi around what are the kind of candidates that they want actually, what are their aspirations as they head into August. We have also been monitoring the process thus far, looking at the various issues, for example, the legal amendments that would have otherwise provided for a wonderful election, pre-election period, looking at the court's decisions, some very controversial, as you know, around election preparedness and also candidatures. We have also been engaging on now the post-election conversation that will have to happen, which is how will the judiciary be properly kitted to handle the election disputes, which will be there.
Yeah, they're going to be there.
As a country, we have had a wonderful record of going to court for everything. So in 2013, we had 130 cases. In 2017, they moved to 388, and we foresee that in 2022, we will hit the 500s.
Wow.
So how is the judiciary preparing to handle such cases? So we have been engaging with them in that regard. With the ODPP, I am glad to say that we have been having wonderful conversations pertaining to your election preparedness, particularly in the development of the electoral compendium on hate speech and other related offenses. And we believe that this is a wonderful tool towards the provision of, the prosecution of election offenses. So I could say that as ICJ, we have been very engaged in the process, both with duty bearers and also with Mwananchi. So yes, that is a little bit about what we do.
Oh, karibu sana. It's funny you say about how we keep going to court for everything. I saw someone went to court for that, and those terms, hatupangwingwi. I'm shocked someone actually went to court.
Yes, and it's
to contest it.
And it's been declared that hatupangwingwi and sipangwingwi is not offensive. Yeah.
Welcome to Kenya.
We have judgments on everything, which is a good thing as well, because we don't settle things outside of court, we go to court.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right, karibu sana to the show.
Thank you, Anita.
Karibu Festus.
Thank you.
Karibu, just tell us a bit about what you do at IPOA, first of all, and then who IPOA is.
Thank you, Anita, and good morning, everybody. My name is Festus Kinoti. I'm also an advocate of the High Court. I work at the Independent Policing Oversight Authority as the Head Legal Services and Acting Director, Complaints Management and Legal Services. IPOA is actually a creation of human rights.
Oh.
The movement towards creation of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority started due to what happened in 2007-2008, post-election violence. And when Kenyans looked at what transpired, they said, we need an independent civilian oversight body that will hold the police to account with regard to police conduct. And therefore, IPOA is established as a state agency. It is established under the Independent Policing Oversight Authority Act of 2011. IPOA is mandated basically to hold the police accountable to the public. IPOA is also mandated to give effect to the Constitution, that is Article 244 of the Constitution, that requires the police to uphold professionalism, accountability, transparency. And so IPOA's mandate is steeped in holding the police accountable, and it is steeped in human rights. When you think about human rights and you think about how human rights operates, duty bearers have two types of duties and responsibilities, three types in human rights. You have a duty to protect, duty to fulfill human rights, and duty to prevent abuse of human rights by third parties. So when we look at what IPOA does and when it's oversighting the National Police Service, IPOA has various functions. One of them is to investigate complaints of misconduct or criminal conduct by members of the National Police Service. The other one is to monitor policing operations. And I'll talk about this because we are going to the elections. And one of the key aspects with regard to elections, the persons who provide security during elections are members of the National Police Service. And therefore, IPOA has a key role to monitor, not the elections, but the conduct of the police during elections. And we have been doing this since 2013, 2017, we also did it. And we are going to do it also this time. We have been doing it. We have been monitoring police operations pre-elections. We will monitor them during elections, and we will monitor them post-elections. And the purpose of this monitoring of police operations during pre, during, and post-elections is to see how are the police conducting themselves. Are they conducting themselves in accordance with the law, in the manner in which they are doing the policing? And this is critical for human rights because police as state agencies, they have duties. A duty to respect human rights. That means when they are engaging members of the public, they must engage them in accordance with human rights. That is, they will not violate human rights. Secondly, then they have a duty to provide security. You and I cannot go vote if we are not assured of our security. So that is a state obligation to ensure we can fulfill that aspect of our right to exercise our voting right by providing security. So we will be looking into that. And we'll also be looking, the other aspect we'll also be looking at, police officers themselves. Is their welfare taken care of during this period? Which is very critical for us when we are doing that monitoring. So we have already been doing preparations with regard to that. We have been monitoring even during the campaign period. We are still doing monitoring, and we are planning on doing monitoring. We have been engaging various actors, civil society actors. We've been doing trainings on public order management together. We have been sensitizing them on what IPOA mandate, so that when they go to monitor, because we have various agencies that are going to monitor, including civil society organizations, what can they pick from those monitoring so that they can relay the information to IPOA? Where we'll not be able to reach, we are sure various civil society actors will be able to get there, and they'll be able to give us information. With regard to the DPP, we have had very close collaboration. One of the things we have done with the DPP is we've come up with a standard operating procedures on investigation and prosecution of serious human rights violations. That is critical because now that guides various agencies involved in the investigation and prosecution what is to be done, who is to do what, and within what timelines.
How do you make the decision to charge?
That makes it very easy, and that then helps us synergize our efforts as IPOA, as the NPS, and as the DPP when it comes to where human rights have been violated. How do we investigate? How do we prosecute? And how do we proceed post-conviction?
Post-conviction. Yes. What's the difference between what IPOA does and internal? What is that called?
The Internal Affairs Unit.
Yes.
Okay. IPOA, first of all, I should say, IPOA is an independent body. It's established by statute. It is not part of the National Police Service. We are civilians.
I feel like you need to repeat that.
IPOA is... Yes,
you're civilians.
We are civilians.
All right.
We are civilians. We are not part of the National Police Service.
Okay.
We are an independent oversight mechanism over the National Police Service. The Internal Affairs Unit is part of the National Police Service. It is a mechanism within the National Police Service. And IPOA has a mandate and an obligation to also oversight the Internal Affairs Unit. In fact, the law requires us to oversight, review, and audit the functions of the Internal Affairs Unit because it is also a critical factor within the National Police Service, and its main function is actually to look at disciplinary offences committed by members of the National Police Service. IPOA oversights the entire National Police Service, including the Internal Affairs Unit of the National Police Service.
Okay, interesting. We learn every day. You know, when you say IPOA, even to the members of the public, we just see cops. So it's like you're being told to go report a cop to a cop. Yeah, so that's why I was saying it's important for us to shout that you're a civilian organization.
Totally civilian.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So Julie, you're talking about civic education.
Yes.
And that looks, now it points to me, the citizen. Are we ready for these elections? Has there been enough civic education?
I would say that the civic education this time round isn't at its best. In previous elections, we had a very robust engagement with Kenyans, owing to a lot of institutions actually taking up the voter education process. I know that IBC actually has just flagged off its voter education campaign. I think they did that after the national election conference held earlier this week. But we are 20 days, almost 20 days to the elections, and people still do not know how they're going to vote, how the ballot paper looks. I think we also assume that because we have done numerous elections that it's almost second nature. But these are small things that we need to discuss. We have seen IEBC reporting numerous times that people are told that if you want a preferred candidate, sign across them. If you don't want another candidate, mark an X, which then becomes a spoiled ballot. So those are the things that I would expect right now to be running continuously on a loop on every station, every radio station, TV station, because Kenyans need to understand the small mistakes that they make to invalidate their right.
Their rights,
So in terms of preparedness, I think we are there, but we could do more.
We could do more.
So I know a lot of institutions will be rolling out campaigns moving forward.
A bit late, right?
It's a bit late in the hour. It's a bit late in the hour, in all honesty. And these are some of the things we'll be reflecting on post-election.
Yeah.
Should we have started certain campaigns much earlier?
I think so. And our favorite subject has been Chapter 6.
Yes.
Do you think we got it? You know, we've talked about Chapter 6 for so long as a country, and then finally we're just seeing things going off. Do we still have a chance to see Chapter 6 working for us?
I think we are at a moment where we need to really evaluate as a nation what we really wanted out of Chapter 6.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to put ideology on paper but not actualize it. And I think that's what we have done. We have a very robust, actually one of the best Chapter 6s in the country and in the world.
Really?
Yes, our leadership and integrity conversation is so high level, but the actual problem is we don't know how to implement it. In regards to the fact that you find that a person who is charged with a corruption offense or an offense that requires them to step out of office has various appellate processes until they're found guilty and therefore mandated to step aside, is a challenge because of the implementation of that entire provision. You find that persons can exhaust an appellate process all the way to the Supreme Court, which would ideally take 10 years. So this person will therefore serve in office for 2 terms. And until you find them guilty, that person will have served, managed public finances, managed the governance of an entire institution, and then thereafter you're saying they are actually unfit to hold office. So it's almost as though we, in principle, want it, but we don't know how to actualize it.
We don't know how to actualize it,
And I know it's a conversation that now will have to start post this election because of the numerous issues that have come up. I think we are all seized of the Governor Sonko matter and how it has impacted the gubernatorial state of affairs in Mombasa. And it challenges various institutions, the DPP, the EACC, but also the judiciary, in terms of also its processes towards ensuring that it's efficient in expedition of justice, because certain matters ought to have been adjudicated and completed early enough for the electorate, for IEBC to make informed decisions around whether certain people can be cleared to actually run for these particular elective offices.
I feel you can hammer Chapter 6 till the end of the show, because I'm about to say the institutions seem to have done their bit. They are doing what they need to do. So it is up to now us to exercise our responsibility on the ballot. So maybe that's just a discussion for another day. So back to our discussion on human rights, Festus. Are we ready for elections as a people? Are institutions like the NPS, are they ready for elections? Are you seeing as though they are ready?
Thank you, Anita. There have been various processes and programs done by the NPS to get ready for elections. You've seen them releasing the election security manual. They are currently doing trainings on public order management, which is critical because a lot of human rights violations actually take place during public order processes and management. So it is critical that they do this training. They do release the election security manual, which they have done, and they are preparing themselves for it. Other agencies such as IPOA, we have trained all our monitors on public order management. We have, in fact, trained all our staff on public order management. We are now getting accreditation, and we have also certified our monitors as investigators. What does that mean? When we release our monitors to the ground during these are
civilians.
These are civilians. But IPOA has a mandate to investigate. And what we do is we are allowed by the law to certify our own staff as investigators. So we've trained them in investigation, we've trained them in monitoring. So what will happen when they go to the ground to monitor conduct of police during elections, they'll be able to pick up any instances where there is violation of human rights, and they'll be the first investigators at the scene. What we've also done is we've partnered with other agencies that are doing monitoring. CHR is doing monitoring, FIDA is also doing monitoring, and other civil society agencies that are doing monitoring. When they pick up instances where there are violations of human rights, as they are, or instances where there is misconduct, then that information is relayed to IPOA, and IPOA can be able to take action during that process. So we prepared ourselves, and we hope that the National Police Service, according to the trainings that they are undertaking, they will be ready. Yes.
I actually had a question, like, can we actually say human rights? This is now from a very civilian perspective. Can we actually say human rights and police in the same sentence?
Yes.
Because we've seen a lot of violations in the past elections. Remember the Kisumu incident for Baby Pendo?
Yes.
There has been instances where the police and human rights can never be said in one sentence. So are we safe to say human rights and police in one sentence?
Yes, Anita, in fact, that is where we should go, and that is where we are striving to go to, because if you look at the Constitution and what it requires of the National Police Service, one of them is to uphold human rights. The focus of police reforms was to change what we had as a police force into a service, and the impact of a service is to respect human rights. So that is critical. And what we are doing, and with all the trainings that the police are undergoing, is to change that mindset from a force, that is against the citizenry to a service whose function is to serve the citizenry. So it is not just about, that old mindset that you had a police force that is just going to clobber people during elections period. The mindset needs to change, and that is the impact of the training that the police are receiving. And what we are telling them in our dialogue sessions with the police is, your mindset needs to change. Of course, we are there as an oversight mechanism where you go wrong. But the first people who need to change is the police themselves internally in their training, in their mindset towards the public. And also the public themselves. Now, the public needs to know that police and human rights belong in the same sentence. And therefore, where they see that that is not going according to how it should be, kindly do make that complaint.
You make a complaint.
Immediately.
Yeah. Karibu sana, Madam Tabitha.
Thank you so much.
So we are talking about human rights, and we're trying to understand the mandate of each institution that is represented here. So when it comes to the ODPP and human rights, what is your mandate? What are you ready to do, for this election?
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, viewers and all our followers. I just want to say that the DPP is mandated under the Constitution, under Article 157. And one of the duties of the DPP is to uphold human rights, and therefore we prosecute human rights violations. To be specific, the ODPP has created a dedicated division, that is Civil and Human Rights Division, of which I am the head.
Okay.
And some of the duties that we undertake is prosecution of violations, directing the IG to investigate human rights violations, and developing policies and guidelines that enhance human rights, and participating in national and international human rights forums, and also collaborating with other agencies and CSOs in dealing with human rights.
Yeah.
We have a very vibrant division, and we have done so much in ensuring that we are able to carry out our duties. We have developed several tools and guidelines which help us in this work. So, and we work very, very closely, not just with stakeholder agencies, but also with donor partners. And I can say that a lot of progress has been made. And just to contribute to the topic, that even as we are looking forward to elections, I will underscore the point by my colleague from IPOA that the police are there to uphold human rights. And we do not want a situation where citizens look at police officers and the first instinct is flight, as in escape. And we saw even during the COVID season, where many people got seriously injured or even met death as a result of trying to run away from the police.
Yeah.
We want a society where people should run towards the police for safety. And that is why where we all need to partner and change the image of police. I would also say that probably there is much being done by the police themselves, by the NPS, but very little known to the public.
Yeah.
So therefore that image is still there where people want to run away, and that should not be the situation.
I think I'm one of those people, Julie. I want to run, especially during, say, it's election period and I see the police, I want to run. So I think a lot needs to be done to change this perception we have as a people. Because this is Kenya. This is an election happening in an African country, and these are policemen, African police. So maybe my question is this aspirational? Are we there yet?
I think we're making considerable steps to get there. The police service has done quite a lot to professionalize the service itself. There are various policies they have put in place. They have been doing quite a lot of trainings. They have incorporated human rights in their training. So even as they recruit, as they train, human rights is part and parcel of their training. You have seen instances of dialogue between the community and the police in certain heated instances. And that is the kind of aspiration we want to, whereby Kenyans actually run to the police and say that this is what's happening, protect us, intervene, create law and order. However, a few instances also happen that deter the trust of the public to the police. So I think it's a give and take. We are making headway, but there are still some persons, there are still some police officers who do not really ascribe to the human rights standards. And those are the people who ideally should be actually weaved out of the system. And I'm glad that a lot of them are actually falling within the ambit of IPOA, are being reported by their fellow policemen. Because you also find that police officers aspire to be and work in a professional institution that upholds human rights. So some of them have been reporting their colleagues who are errant in nature. So that's the kind of institution that we want, a place where if others are not doing right, you report them to the oversight institution for them to take up investigation. And you ensure that the people who you have within the service are actually ascribing to the principles and ideals of the Constitution, because that's the kind of service you want. Moving into elections, I think the other thing that is important is emotions during the election period are very heightened. People are very invested in the outcome of an election. So the kind of training that we need to also embark on for both the public as well and also the police is something around the question of how do you calm the energy? How do you ensure you de-escalate a situation? De-escalation is so important, and I think it's part of the curriculum in the public order management discussion, because you will find that people will be angry, rightfully so, about certain decisions that will be done. So how do you ensure that they ventilate that? Because it's also part of their right. They have a right to political engagement. They have a right to freedom of expression. They have a right to freedom of protest. But how do you ensure that they do that within the confines of the Constitution? So understanding that that kind of expression is actually constitutional, and protecting that expression is a discussion that now we need to have, with the police.
There's a very thin line. You can easily cross from participation, freedom of expression to
all the other ways,
to the other side. So post-election violence in 2017 must have taught us some lessons that I know as institutions you say we will not go back there. What are some of those things we learned and we know we are not going there no matter what?
I think as civil society, one of the reflections we had post-2007, 2013, 2017 is documentation is important. Documentation is very critical in order to build cases, to assist the various institutions to do the investigation. So for us, we learned that it's important to document. But over and above that, we learned the importance of training, adequate and sufficient training to all parties. There was almost a legitimate expectation that people will act in a certain manner, but they hadn't gotten the requisite training to understand how to act, to understand what principles guide these processes. So investment, heavy investment by both the civil society actors, by development partners in training of all actors within the elections framework has been something that we have carried through because of the learnings that we have had. I think another thing that we learned is questions around transparency. We need to communicate to one another and to the public at large around what are the issues that are happening. I am very encouraged by the various communication that has been happening from the IEBC post, I think in the last 20 days.
Yes, they've been very
prior
active.
to that, it was a bit quiet, and even those are some of the issues as civil society we raised. Communicate, tell us what you're doing, tell us the challenges you're experiencing, so that we can collaboratively look at ways to mitigate them. And I think with the more transparent we are getting, we are also seeing that there are certain policies that are putting in place that we may be able to adopt and we may be able to preempt going into the election, which could, in fact, temper the expectations of Kenyans as they go to the ballot. So I think that communication, that transparency, the openness is reflections that we have had. Do not do anything in secret. I think one thing we all
don't
know
operate
in Kenya,
in silos.
Don't operate in silos and don't operate in secrecy. I think one of the leading issues of the 2007-2008 post-election violence was the secrecy around the announcement. So that also was a distrust in nature, leading to Kenyans reacting. So institutions need to understand that they are here to serve the public. We are all here to serve the public, even civil society. Our aspiration is to serve the public and ensure that they have a harmonious environment to live in. So we are all here for Kenyans, and we all need to work together to ensure that the environment we create is good and conducive on August the 9th and post-August the 9th.
Festus, what are some of those things that IPOA knows happened in 2007 or 2017 and should not happen again this election?
Thank you. 2017 we had incidences of serious human rights violations.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot hide from that. There were a lot of incidences of unlawful use of force by members of the National Police Service, not during the election, but that was post-election, during public order management process. And one of the things that we learned during that process is that investigating, because IPOA has a mandate to investigate these cases of human rights violations, especially, is investigating such cases. It's not a simple matter. It is a matter that requires multi-stakeholder engagement. And what IPOA did from that lesson is engage the DPP, engage the National Police Service and other civil society actors, and came up with standard operating procedures on how to investigate and prosecute these offenses. Because these are not offenses that, like the normal murder offense that takes place somewhere. These are high-profile, offenses that take place in situations that are very fluid, that it's very difficult to actually investigate and prosecute if you're acting alone. So it needs multi-stakeholder engagement. And then through those standard operating procedures, now we've come up with a process in which we can be able to identify, investigate, and get the DPP to prosecute these offenses. Also, the other thing we learned as an authority, and we've made recommendations to the National Police Service, is the need for training, and I think that has been spoken about, on public order management by police officers. How do you deal with a crowd? How do you deal with people who are exercising their freedom of assembly?
Have they been trained?
And there have been training sessions taking place the National Police Service, and we want to see that translated during the election period, into actual proper public order management. The other aspect that is critical, and I think for us, and we did make a recommendation to the National Police Service on this, was the issue of transfers. Because we noticed during the 2017 election, just barely a month before, there were a lot of transfers of senior police officers, in fact. Over 24 officers were transferred during that period. And the problem that does is, now the officers who are probably at various places and had prepared the election strategies, the security strategies and such, and they were shifted, that created a problem with regard to management and security during elections, and also how to deal with the public order management. And that we can see that is one of the things that the National Police Service has taken up. And there hasn't been a lot of transfers of senior police officers during this election period. The other aspect we learned, and we made a recommendation to the National Police Service, on welfare of the officers themselves. Because sometimes, you meet an officer who has not received the allowances, and that officer is dealing with a member of the public. They're already hungry, and therefore they're also angry. Yeah. And so we've seen that recommendation taken up by the IEBC, whereby now, for instance, allowances for police officers taking place will be paid directly to their bank accounts, and not as before, where trickling that salary, that allowance down from the senior police officer to the junior police officer took a lot of time. So there have been changes, and we have seen some recommendations uptick by the National Police Service. We want to see more uptake of our recommendations from our 2017 elections by the National Police Service. And we think if those recommendations are taken up wholly by the National Police Service, we'll see better prepared National Police Service for these elections. But we are working closely with the Director of Public Prosecutions to ensure that where there are violations, we now have a proper procedure whereby we can investigate and have them prosecuted.
Madam, 2017 and now, what are those lessons and what are those things that are now new that you're going to see in these elections?
Yeah, I think my observation, in addition to what my colleagues have alluded to, first of all, there was excessive use of force, excessive. Yeah. And what I observed is that whenever there is that time for elections, just before and immediately after, the security forces, they gear up, they form up security strategy plans and what. And the command start strategy, and they actually sometimes even document that so and so will be in charge of this area, and they have their troops and how they'll be deployed and who they'll be reporting to. But the excess is that they are over-anticipating breakdown. So they over-prepare themselves to use force. And therefore, sometimes it is not the kind of force that they use is uncalled for. But you also find the police officers, the actual ones who go now into to enforce that breakdown or whatever. They also, some of them are in excess. They go into houses and do all manner of things, which are now not, you cannot define them as enforcing the law, because they commit violations like rape, assault, all manner of crazy things, even eating people's food and doing manner of things. and even throwing tear gases in households. So that was very, very alarming. And as has been stated, there need to be a lot of training. But I think one of the issues that was overlooked was the framework of law to address such situations. Because we had actually the violations of 2002 were worse than what we see now, but they were not addressed simply because there was no legal framework. But now we are saying we have the International Crimes Act, and of which the High Court of Kenya has jurisdiction. And some of these violations can be addressed through the International Crimes Act. And this is where the command responsibility concept comes in, because if you are in charge and there is a command strategy, then the person in charge will have to be held accountable for the actions of the juniors. So if juniors, if you are going to deploy juniors, then you have to be very specific about what they are going to do. You have to be very clear about who will be there at any time. You will be held accountable. If you are not able to tell us which officer or which troop was at a specific crime scene, then it is you to answer for it.
Do they know?
They should be able to know, because that is why they have a command structure. That is why you cannot just deploy troops generally and tell them go to a specific area and go and deal with them, and you are not even telling them what they are going to do. So if there is you expect riots on a certain road or a certain public area, then people have run away literally from the police and retreated to their homes. Why would you go and attack them in the middle of the night? That goes beyond enforcement of the law. It's actually an attack, a violation of human rights, because we had cases where people were sleeping in the wee hours, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. We had police banging the gate, kicking the doors open, doing ABC, and then they end up raping, defiling young people, and beating, assaulting, and maiming the menfolk. So that will not be tolerated. And as I can say, we have a tripartite task force where the ODPP works very closely with the IPOA and the NPS through the IAU, and we have regular meetings, and we've come up with structures for efficient and effective investigations and prosecutions of such violations if they arise. So I do not think that it is going to be at all ordered this time round to deal with the culprits, because the law is there and the structures are in place. But we need to make a lot of effort also to educate the public and all our stakeholders to know what to expect and what to do. I think it's important actually. So what is expected of me as a citizen? We now know what is expected of the police. So what about me as a citizen?
Well, as a citizen, I think you have the right. You have various rights. First of all, your rights are various in nature. You have human rights, which are inalienable, and you have them because you're a human being. And they're vested within the Constitution, and particularly the Bill of Rights, Chapter 4. During the elective period, you have the right to vote for your preferred candidate. You have the right to engage in the political process. You can actually attend campaigns. It's perfectly legal to attend campaigns, because that is how you engage with your political aspirants. Engage in the campaigns. Talk about your aspirants. Talk about the manifestos. Discuss. On the D-Day, come and vote peacefully and go home. However, now after the election is where things get interesting. You have a right to protest if need be. You have a right to assemble. You have a right to express yourself within the confines of the law. I still insist on freedom of expression is limited so long as you don't interfere with other people's rights.
It's not absolute.
It's not absolute. So you have a right to express yourself, but within the confines of the law. You have a right to also engage and question. That is also the right to seek dispute resolution within the courts. So that's why you even see that presidential petitions, sometimes the petitioners are not necessarily the candidates.
The civilians.
It can be a civilian. So you have the right to question the outcome of an election process. So you can't go to court on these issues. But I think the more fundamental issue is, as Kenyans, we also need to engage and be present and also understand that this is our own country. We have a right to take care of one another. We have a right not to be used as conduits of violence. Because unfortunately, election violence, if you realize, is something that is championed by aspirants to people. Do it for us. protect our vote. Yet they don't
people,
engage in the violence themselves. They tell other people to do so. They fund other people to do so. So as Kenyans, you have the right to say no. Desist from election violence. Ensure that you actually abide by the Constitution. Understand that there's actually an Election Offences Act that is there, so that you're not supposed to engage in voter bribery. You're not supposed to actually receive a bribe. And I've seen a lot of Kenyans engaging in open voter bribery issues. It's a conversation I've been having with the ODPP around also the enforcement question, because will you arrest half of Kenya? So people need to understand that these laws exist. So on election day, there are various things you shouldn't do. You shouldn't frustrate the process. You shouldn't campaign. You shouldn't conduct campaigns on the lines. So as Kenyans understand the law that exists, various institutions will be running campaigns around election offences and what they actually are, to sensitize Kenyans so that you're not found on the wrong side of the law because you did not know. But again, ignorance is not a defense. So you need to know the law. But at the same time, you need to desist from election violence. Another thing is you need to report. I think an important issue that Kenyans don't know is IPOA, police, the prosecution cannot be everywhere. You have also the mandate to report instances that are happening within your community to the relevant authorities. So they will give the numbers. So report to the various institutions, report to IPOA, report to the Commission on Human Rights, and ensure that these issues are also canvassed. Because if you go quiet, then unfortunately they will not be addressed. So those are some of the rights of the citizens, but at the same time, I think as Kenyans, we know the repercussions of violence. We have been here before, and as we move into the election, we should understand that this is our country. Vote for who you want, but respect other people's votes. Be politically tolerant. You might not agree with with the other person's decisions, but understand that that is their right to have a differing opinion. So let's just ensure that we respect one another and we see past the election period.
Tabitha, I'm just wondering, when is it unlawful to protest? When does a protest become unlawful?
It becomes unlawful, one, if you do not have the requisite permit, because you have to seek a permit for a meeting. Yes, you have to go to the police. Is it the OCS? They give you a permit. That permit, my expectation would be you specify the time, the place, the venue, and the purpose of that meeting, and who are the key people expected, and then maybe the estimated number of people you are expecting. Now, it goes out of order.
I can't just wake up from my estate and say twendeni kwa barabara.
No, you need to get the necessary permit. And it has to be very specific. That will also inform the police on what kind of protection you may require. Now, it goes out of order. For example, one, you now have the permit, but you do not restrict yourself to the confines of that permit. Maybe you said you'll go, for example, let me use Uhuru Park, but you decide after Uhuru Park, let us protest along Kenyatta Avenue. You know, that's a totally
so at that point, the police can come in.
They can come in. Now, again, you invite other key people who can attract other crowds who are not expected. If it were not be that you change, because you can say, I'm the leader, and these are the people who are going to address. Then you bring other people. Who join. The other thing would be like you speak to your participants, provoke them to the extent that there is a breakdown of law and order. And you know, whenever there will be a gathering or an assembly, there'll always be police. Just to stay on watch, just in case there is a breakdown. But now, these people sometimes get so charged that breakdown is inevitable. Then the police sometimes are not sure as to how to react. So that's why sometimes their reaction borders on excessive use of force. And then that's where we go to the freedom of assembly, that they should be guided and trained on how to deal with crowds, to deal with the assembly.
Because I believe right now we're expecting charged protests. I mean, the expectation is it's an election, and in Kenya, elections are quite emotional and charged. So when there's a protest, there's an expectation that it's going to be charged. So the question is, are the police trained already to expect this sort of protest?
Thank you, Anita. Yes, the police should be trained already, and you've seen they've released the election security manual and their preparation for this. You know, one of the things you do with regard to prevention and violation of human rights as the National Police Service is to prepare in advance how you're going to deal with a charged crowd. And the system we have in Kenya with regard to freedom of assembly is a notification system, meaning you notify the police that I'm going to be protesting on this day.
I don't get that bit. That I have to notify the police I'm going to protest. What if it is a spur of the moment thing, like, ayapana twende?
Yes, we're not talking about spontaneous.
Yeah.
You know, there are those that are called spontaneous
Yeah.
under human rights, under international human rights law, spontaneous protest. But there are those that are planned. And when you plan it, you have to notify, and there's a notification regime provided under the Public Order Act. And if there are issues with regard to that demonstration, what the police do is then they tell you, you cannot hold that protest because of this and this. Proper reasons must be given as to why they say you cannot hold it. But we also have to understand as Kenyans that what is protected is the right to peaceful assembly. Peaceful, You cannot be armed, you're being violent and you say that is a right. What is protected is peaceful. So you must also respect the rights of others when you're doing it. Don't be violent. Don't use arms during that protest. But also it is critical for the police to also understand that the fact that an assembly is unlawful, the manner in which you use force with regard to that assembly is also critical. Because the fact that an assembly is unlawful does not then give you the right to use excessive force in dispersing that assembly. So that is also critical for police to understand. And like Tabitha said, especially commanders to understand that is critical, because then they can be held responsible under the International Crimes Act, where those crimes then become systematic and widespread in nature. So for citizenry, it is important for them to understand that respect of your rights is also dependent on you respecting someone else's right. So when it comes to demonstration and assembly, what is protected is peaceful assembly. Don't be violent, because then that affects my right. And therefore,
I'm emotional. My candidate has been, I don't know what.
Yes.
And Madam Anita, the other aspect of human rights that is supposed to be protected is property. And that is, there's a very, very thin line between protests and looting. Very thin, because very
easily crosses,
And I don't know why when people want to protest, they'll always go to the business center because there's an opportunity to loot. And if you are in this country, you must have been in primary school, maybe then, during the Sabasaba days, you would appreciate what I'm talking about. There would be no business during that season because shops would be broken into and looted, and it is bad. And that is why there has to be protection of law and order. Otherwise,
everything will go haywire.
Just to add on that, I agree that protests have been synonymous sometimes with destruction of property.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that has also been the entry point of criminal institutions and criminal persons who are not ideally in the protest to ventilate on the issues on the day, but to loot.
Yes.
So it's also been a delicate balance between how do you ensure that you adequately inform the police service, not only for your protest, but also to give you security and to appreciate what happens within that peaceful assembly, because there are peaceful assemblies that have been done by a lot of institutions, and you see the entry of criminals into that process for them to do criminal actions, be it looting, be it vandalism, and actually even spurring up the protest into a negative protest. So I think also the understanding that the police service need to come into this is that everyone, the ideal behind a protest is sometimes good, but there are people who are not having the same intention. So how do you de-escalate without necessarily targeting the organizers of that peaceful endeavor, and then looking for the actual criminals who are there? So I thought I'd just add that because it has been a very dicey issue.
It is.
And we are glad that actually post our Sabasaba, which happened 2 weeks ago, it was relatively peaceful. I think everyone can commend that it was relatively peaceful. So we can say that either we have learned how to peacefully protest as a country.
Maybe we are getting there.
We're getting there. So it's one of those learning.
Let me just also add that there's a certain group of people who must always be protected. The vulnerable. The vulnerable. You will have the disabled people. You will have women, and you will have children, and also the very old, who may be in that meeting legally. They happen to be there, or they happen to be around that area, and may get caught up. They must be protected so that that violence does not catch up with them.
Okay. So someone asks, look, guys, thanks so much. How do you measure force sorry, I'm slouching. How do you measure force whereby officers attacked with stones during election period and the use of firearm killing someone instantly? Is it justified, or how is it since the officer's life is in danger? I think it's just asking to what extent can the police use force, especially when we are attacking them. You're throwing stones at them, you are attacking them with all crude weapons. So are they allowed to use force at that moment, in that moment?
Let me start by saying that the police standing orders
Yeah.
guide them in detail as to how to use force, when to use force, and the limits. So if they go outside the police standing order, the force standing orders, then they'll be held accountable. But every case will be considered according to the circumstances that play out, according to the facts. And I also want to underscore that even right now, the ODPP is engaging in a very vibrant training exercise of our police officers, IPOA, and prosecutors, and all our stakeholder agencies on election preparedness. And I happen to be a member of that team. And one aspect that I have always asked, when you are dispersing a crowd and you allege that you shoot in the air, how does it happen that that bullet comes and kills somebody on the ground?
That's a good question.
It defeats the law of gravity. You see, so those are some of the questions that we want to ask.
I like that question. So do they... Then there's also the issue of using live bullets during protests. Is it allowed? Because you see, those ones that defy gravity actually go and kill.
Yeah.
You know, the 6th schedule to the National Police Service Act provides circumstances when police officers can use firearms.
Okay.
And it's quite clear, the circumstances when it can be used. Now, ideally, firearms should not be used. You know, you shouldn't fire at a crowd. I mean, firearms should be used ideally under the 6th schedule when there is imminent threat to life or serious injury to another person or to the officer. But whereby firearms are just used indiscriminately, you know, just shooting at a crowd using live ammunition, that is clearly unlawful. Use of a firearm. Of course, police officers are also human beings. If a police officer is under imminent threat of attack, is being attacked, you know, using weapons, a police officer can't be allowed to use firearms to save his own life, or somebody else is being attacked and his life is threatened to that attack. Police officer is allowed to use his firearm in that instance. But we are not talking about instances whereby, you know, you see a crowd of people and the first thing with regard to dispersing them is to shoot at them using live ammunition. That is not even the training of police officers with regard to use of force. Use of force has to be graduated, you know. You first of all try a non-violent means, discuss, dialogue with them. If they don't, then you graduate the use of force. You know, use other, what are called maybe batons, what are called less lethal weapons, you know, like tear gas canisters and such. Not live ammunition at the first instance. That would be unlawful.
All right.
I think also reflecting back in 2017, there are cases documented of persons who died by tear gas canisters, who died from shots in the back, who died from being trampled on in crowds. These are important cases to consider even as they do their election preparedness. I don't want to be scientific about it, as Madame has put it, but what is the angle? How do you shoot a tear gas canister to disperse crowds? How do you ensure that it doesn't harm anyone? So those are also...
So these are canisters that hit people? These
are canisters that hit people and actually inflict death.
It should fall on the ground and then explode and hit the gas. But there are times when the canister itself is a weapon. If it hits somebody on the head, it can kill instantly.
Oh, okay. All right. So again, there's another question by Luke. He asks, if 15 officers are on duty and one of them kills an innocent civilian, are all criminally responsible? Tabitha, you're the prosecutor.
It actually depends on the circumstances. But a lot of times we may hold all of them accountable depending on the role, that they played. So, and that is why we have IPOA here, who investigate and go into details to just bring out the role of every officer. But some of the circumstances that play out when we are reviewing our files is that you find like several police officers on duty, and then they end up killing or maiming or injuring somebody so seriously, and then they decide to protect one another. And they say nothing happened and they are silent. So that one now, what do you do? That's where you find all of them being held accountable, because as long as it can be proved that they were at the scene. So,
They
yeah,
can-
that's the
yeah.
answer.
All right. Thanks, Agatha Lango. She says informative discussion. And Becky Arunga, she says the superiors should certainly be held to higher standards of accountability in the event of violations by their juniors. That's their command responsibility, right? Yeah. Alois Kiamo says he's following the good conversation. Ian Josh is watching. Thank you so much. And then this one asks again, if someone advances to you during this campaign period with a knife, Anita, he's asking me. Where would I be? So what can you do for self-defense? Run.
Flight, run.
I will run. Yeah.
Run and report to the nearest police
I
station.
really wonder if I'll get to a police station, if not under my bed. Yeah. So yeah, I think these are very important discussions we need to have, and I think we've really talked about the readiness of the institutions and the police, and maybe the next discussion ought to be the readiness of the civilians, because sometimes we go out to provoke, we go out to look for drama, and
I don't know whether you have addressed the issue of the politician, their roles. The politician's role also is really matters.
Yeah.
They are supposed to just articulate when they get the permit or they go ahead to go and meet. Just articulate your manifesto, because this goes hand in hand with hate speech and provocation. So avoid incitement, avoid hate speech. Then uphold the constitution and the rule of law. Organize the rallies and organize them. And I was emphasizing just the other day that you must help the police to help you have a successful rally. So, for example, if you just wanted peaceful assembly and it is a manageable group, can you even give them some identification kind of dress code? For example, let's say we have some t-shirts, like white t-shirts. It will be very easy for the police to know if you have been infiltrated. And also stick to the area of your rally or to the area of your protest. Don't go out of order. And then you also have a duty to do civic education. Don't peddle lies. You know, these members of the public are being lied to.
but we thrive on it.
The lies. So you also have a duty to do civic education so that you don't mislead people. And then when somebody else tells them something else, they feel like now they are being cheated. They will not be able to know who is telling the lies.
Is there a command responsibility when it comes to politicians? Can they be charged
It is
with...
not command responsibility, but they can be held accountable if there's a breakdown of law and somebody is injured or something goes wrong, or somebody's life is threatened as a result of what they organized and they were not able to control. Yes.
Wow.
Of course, and we hold them accountable for hate speech and incitement. We do. Yes.
I think there's a lot of responsibility then when you're organizing something like a protest, because how do you ensure that it is controlled within what your expectations are met? What you check the police station when you're asking for a permit is what is going to happen. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult, and that's why you should just make an effort to make sure that your expectations will be met, so that even when the police come, they are also able to protect you within those places.
But I like the idea of identify your people. Simple identification, even just a ribbon. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing. Or kofia. Sisi wote tumevaa kofia ya white, but that one happening.
It might be a logistical solution.
All right.
Anita, just to clarify, you're not actually seeking a permit when you notify the police. You're notifying them. You know,
you're just notifying
You're notifying them. Then if they have a problem with you doing that protest or that assembly, then they give you reasons as to why you should not do it. So it's a notification. It's not a permission you're seeking from them. You're notifying them of the same. That is the regime we have in Kenya.
I think the problem normally comes when I notify, then someone says I already notified yesterday, so tunaenda kukutana hapo mundu kumundu.
I think it is very important because you must say what you want to do and where. We've heard of cases in the past where you are told you cannot hold your rally in such and such a place, and because so and so is already going there, and so you might have rivalries.
You know, we started the show with the two institutions talking about their mandate. Does the ODPP mandate remain the same during this time of elections?
The ODPP mandate remains the same during this time, but now we have gone beyond what you know in the Constitution, as I've said, we've made preparations. We are doing very aggressive training on election preparedness. We have talked about the standard operating procedures that we have in place. We have also, let me just mention that we have also developed tools on the Prevention of Torture Act. So this is a framework where we deal with the police and security officers where it comes to getting information from people who are in custody, that they should not obtain any kind of confessions or statements by way of torturing. And then we also have a case digest, which is a tool where we are just examining cases that have gone to court and have been determined which direction is our jurisprudence taking, and that opens up our minds even as to how we want to make decisions to charge and how we want how deep we want our investigations to happen. And we are also, I've also alluded to the tripartite task force, which is a very, very vibrant organ. And this collaboration that we are having with our stakeholders and partnering with our human rights bodies. Yes.
All right. Thank you. So thanks, Mukana Mukabras. She says, good job, ODPP, for enlightening us. And then somebody still arguing about that bit about the 15 policemen and 1 civilian. He asks, how can all be accountable when others are unarmed? But I think you explained it very well. Sonye Okumu Habat says, thank you very much. She says, a good conversation. And of course, others are watching. And we totally appreciate this. I wish you had time to talk about the media and their role in upholding human rights. What is their role when they see a violation? Or should they also just report evidence? How do you get this evidence from them?
The media actually play a very vital role because they're informing the citizenry of what is going on. But it is not even just about the citizenry. The DPP is watching, IPOA is watching, the security forces are also watching, because we are able to know what's going on where. Is there a breakdown? Is there a breakdown of law and order? Are there excesses that action need to be taken immediately? So they help us so much. And their work is to let people know. But on the other hand, police have got also a duty to protect them.
The media.
They ought to be protected because they're playing a neutral role. We've had cases where they are attacked, they're beaten, their cameras are destroyed, and that also is an area where we say that is a police violation and they will be held accountable. But they need to report.
Yes. Thank you. I think with regard to the media, and this is critical for us to also say, is that apart from reporting, sometimes it's the media person who's there and records, for instance, a violation of human rights. Please do come forward to us, not only reporting to, in the media, please come to us. Sometimes we have reached out to personalities in the media who have recorded certain violations of human rights and they're not willing to give us that evidence or to record a statement with us. That makes our investigations difficult. So therefore with the media, not only with regard to reporting to the public, but also if you see a violation of human rights, please do come forward to us and also report to us and do record a statement with us. That will help, ensure that that violation doesn't take place again. Yes.
All right.
I think also jumping in on the role of the media, I'm glad that the new protocols that the media employs, particularly in radio, have like a 10-second delay, particularly if a person is perpetuating hate speech.
Oh, yes.
So that is a commendation to the media for enhancing such protocols because unfortunately, the only way that persons who are perpetuating hate speech can reach a mass public is through the media, be it radio or TV. So how does the media as well sift and ensure that whatever is being aired actually ascribes to human rights standards and they're not being used as an incitement platform? So I'm glad that most media houses have been able to call out various persons who come on board and say things, and they say that that is not in line with the constitutional framework. What you're saying is actually hate speech. And you have seen various anchors actually saying that you cannot go on with this line of questioning if that's the approach you will take. So that's a good thing. That's a win for the media. But I agree that in terms of evidence collection, there is need for the media to also be facilitative to the roles of IPOA and also the DPP in bringing forth the evidence that they collect, because that electronic evidence certified by the authors, not to go into details, is what is needed
to
secure...
we discussed it last week.
Oh, okay. Good.
And the certificates needed for admissibility.
Exactly. Those are the things that are needed to actually use as evidence and secure the convictions. So you have found that a lot of people who have perpetuated hate speech have actually gone scot-free because of such gaps. So media, I think there's need for a bigger discussion on how you will go about that certifying process without necessarily implicating yourself, because you understand the precarious role that also that evidence production puts you in. I think also in terms of the media, I appreciate now the role that they have taken up, which is fact-checking. I think they've also gone a bit further to ensure that whatever is being said in certain political gatherings is fact-checked. Be it either the sale of certain animal specimen to bring in more money, or the sale of certain product to bring in more produce in the country, in certain manifestos. They have gone a step further to actually check.
They interrogate those things.
Whether that is actually a viable proposal. So I think that's the role of media, to educate, inform, and also to ensure that what is being said is the truth.
And I think they're doing a great job.
Yes.
I want to end the discussion, and I wish you could still talk about a lot of things. There's SGBV during elections, and there's social media. Are you able to violate someone's rights on social media? Does human rights also go in as far as how social media operates? Because I've seen a lot of back and forth, especially Twitter. People just go ham and tell each other whatever. So can you also extend the concept of human rights onto how we discuss our things on social? But maybe for another day. So I'm going to give you a second to just finally, Julie.
All right, so not to borrow from the gubernatorial campaign when I say a second is a bit too short, but I think as we go into the elections as civil society organizations, we will be engaging in various activities. We will be monitoring the elections. We will be observing the elections. We have done our role in terms of capacity building and training of various duty bearers. We believe that the outputs of these trainings have been important for everyone. We will also be looking at monitoring the post-election conversation, be it the election dispute resolution mechanisms that will be employed, be it the various transitions. I think we also need to look at the fact that after the election there shall be a lot of transitions happening, and you need to ensure that there are peaceful transitions. Looking at the human rights context, we do hope that the various institutions that have a mandate around securing the election do proceed as planned. For the police, reflections on 2017, ensuring that police stations are kitted, particularly on the GBV desks. The polycare units that have been rolled up, how will they be operationalized, particularly during the election process, to ensure that victims of sexual and gender-based violence are attended to expeditiously and also with appropriate care. We look at various entities, particularly the police, to ensure that they uphold human rights standards in policing during this period. We call and employ the politicians at this point to temper the kind of discourses that they are having, to ensure that they don't incite violence and create fodder for violence to be done. We also look at various institutions, particularly the prosecution, to ensure that those who are found eventually guilty, or rather who are perceived to have been the ones who incited the violence, are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. So we really look forward, and we preach peace. I think moving into the next few days, we preach peace to the entire country and the actors in the space. Thank you.
And finally, Festus.
Thank you. I think for us, as IPOA, first, we've prepared ourselves to monitor the elections. We've trained our staff. We've partnered with civil society agencies and also other government agencies to ensure that we'll have coverage all across the country. Where we are not there will be other agencies that will be collecting that information from us. But we cannot do this without members of the public. We need members of the public to give us information. We need members of the public to report. And we have a toll-free line, for instance, 1559, where members of the public can call, and give us give us any information. It is free. It is toll-free.
We like free things, so we need it's free. You shout and say it's free.
1559. We are also they can also do lodge their complaints by email. And also we have a Twitter account and social media. They can also do that. For the police, We've seen the police preparing for these elections, engaging in various trainings. We do expect that there will be no instances of unlawful use of force during these elections. We must learn lessons from 2017 and apply them now. If the police want to be perceived by the public as being a service and not a force, we expect a change in the manner of use of force during the coming elections. And we will be there to watch. Where there will be violations of human rights, we will be ready to investigate, and in collaboration with the DPP, employing the standard operating procedures, we hope that those who will be found to have violated human rights will be prosecuted, so that there is accountability with regard to how policing is done. But also, with regard to the welfare of members of the National Police Service who will be participating in these elections, we do expect that their welfare will be taken care of. We have seen changes that will go towards that aspect. So also for the members of the National Police Service, they have human rights also. So we need also to talk about that.
I was asking Julie earlier, do police have rights?
They do have human rights.
She said yes to confirm that.
And we do expect that their welfare will now be taken care of. They will not suffer the challenges that they had during the 2017 elections. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And finally, you know, we didn't get to talk about the decision to charge. You always must ask. And how do you make the decision to charge? Yes.
So I just want to say that the ODPP is prepared.
Yes.
We have done everything. We are in the process, and I think we are almost winding up the training of our prosecutors and all our stakeholders on election preparedness, how to investigate, what to look out for, and even making the decision to charge. We want to be more efficient and effective, so that as soon as we can, as soon as the investigative files are brought to us, we're able to review very quickly and make a decision to charge. We take into account the threshold, the evidence threshold, and the public interest, and that is what guides us. And public interest is not whether the public feel that so and so should be hanged. It is about what is in the interest of the public. So we are ready for that, and we are partnering with every stakeholder that we need to partner with, and we want to assure Kenyans that your rights will be upheld. Everyone who is found in violation will be prosecuted, and Kenyans should go to the elections. They should not fear. I am sure, going by what has happened in the past, there are certain Kenyans who will sit within the confines of their living room with a remote control and monitor elections without necessarily participating. Without necessarily, but which is wrong. They should participate in elections because that is their civic duty, and they should not fear. Because I believe, going by this discussion, that all the security measures will be in place and everything will go well. So that is what I can say as a parting shot.
Okay. Asante sana. Thank you so much. I wish you could continue discussing this, because there's so much about human rights that keep coming up that you feel like you want to ask. I want to ask and get clarity. But of course, as we go along, we'll get to understand. Human rights and elections must be discussed and must be approached with some intention. I mean, how we approach human rights and how we approach each other, both the state and us, the Watus, and how we approach during this time is very important. So thank you so much once again, and I want to thank everyone who joined us on our socials. Thank you for engaging with us and for asking the questions you asked. We are becoming better. We are learning how to operate within the confines of the law, within the confines of the Constitution, like Julie says, and we hope we are going to do this much better, because we have had elections. We've had elections in 2017 that were quite hot. These ones may be hot or hotter, but I believe we are well informed now to be able to operate with some good manners, like I say, because half the time we go into it with really bad manners. So I'm hoping we are well informed today on human rights and elections. We are saying, and we are confident to say, that when you say human rights, it's okay to say human rights. A policeman in Kenya and a civilian, they can all coexist peacefully. At first, when the show started, I wasn't very confident about saying human rights and police. But I think from the discussion now, I am confident to say that there can be human rights. We can uphold human rights. The police can uphold, and even you, the citizen, are able to uphold human rights as you go about the elections. So, asante sana. Keep engaging. We'll try and respond as we go. And of course, we look forward to engaging with you again next week. And like Tabitha says, go out and vote, be confident, Everything is set for you. Every institution is ready. They've been trained and they're ready to sort of protect you and uphold human rights during this time. So once again, have a good weekend and a good week ahead. Let's catch up in the week to see our next discussion of the day. Asanteni san.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.